Hello and welcome to the Shadower. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual because I'm not shadowing anybody. I'm actually going to be telling the story of the graveyard shift security dispatching job that I worked. This was a job that I did probably for the longest out of any of the jobs I've worked. So let's go back to 2015. It was around November. I was kind of bored at another job I was working at and didn't have much to do, and I got offered a spot as a video surveillance technician. That's what they called it, and we'll just call it at Security Company 1. We'll call it that. And so this was the first time I'd ever worked a graveyard shift job, and honestly I was pretty excited at first because I love nighttime. I love how quiet and just peaceful it is. I was kind of like SpongeBob on that episode where he starts working the night shift, because I was like, I'm at work at night, or I'm on the computer at night. And so I had a bunch of fun with it. And so the whole point of this job was, so it wasn't like you would expect. It's not like a night watchman. I didn't have to wear a uniform and walk around and patrol sites with armed or anything. It was more just like a room full of computers, and we just had access to video cameras that were set up for wherever. So the way these companies work is that they will find a client who needs security, and so they will pay us to go up and set up a whole bunch of cameras on their site, cameras and microphones or speakers. The way that it works from our end is that we'll have this sort of software website thing, whatever you want to call it, where we will get alarms if any of the cameras in our whole system sense something. So these cameras are all motion activated, and so anytime any of the cameras see something moving, it'll pop up an alarm. And so we would click on the alarm, it would show us a clip of what set off the alarm, just a few seconds, and then it would show the live view, so we could see if whatever happened is still going on. And I mean, of course, you get a lot of times where it was just wind blowing trees that would set it off, sometimes just a cat walking by. It was always terrible when you had a light flickering, because that would just set it off all night, and you would just keep having to open up these alarms and then close them right afterwards. So let me just show you. This is what basically our office space looked like. So you had probably 5 or 6, and I'd say anywhere between about 2 and 5 people working at a time, at least while I was there. And I gotta say, when you have a group of people like this, it can be a blessing and a curse, because you're staying up all night, and with 3 or 4 other people, you're usually stuck in a room with them for 10 to 12 hours at a time, every night. And I mean, you got nothing else to do but just talk to each other. Sometimes they'd put on music or watch a movie or something while we worked, but for the most part everyone just gets to know each other. You talk to them, and if you're working with people that you don't really like too much, then it can be pretty painful, because you're gonna be trapped with them for a long time. And some people, even though I liked just about everybody I worked with, it was hard to not get annoyed of people at some point or another, because I mean, when you're spending so much time with these people and there's very little break. I mean, we got a 5-minute break every hour or so, which is a lot, but still you're gonna be surrounded by these people a lot. And yeah, there would just be alarms popping up every couple seconds. You'd have them piling up, and everyone would just kind of take turns picking up the alarms. And then so whenever we got an alarm, the whole purpose of it was, I mean, obviously we wanted to see if anything was going wrong. I mean, false alarms were just a constant thing. I mean, you would get alarms all night long for just stupid little things. But if we saw something that was going on, that maybe there was like a trespasser or something, then we also had these microphones. So we would like pick up the microphone and like yell through the microphone like, "Attention, this is security," you know, like "You're on private property," and you know, we had like a whole script of things to say. And then obviously if they're doing something, if they're breaking in or they're stealing stuff, then we call the police and we send them out there, or send out the security. So I mean, it was technically a dispatching job, but I mean, you know, it's more fun to call it like a security job, I guess. So anyway, I made a few friends at this job, and a few of the people I was working with were a little higher up in the company. Like, they would still come work nights with us sometimes, but they also dealt with management. And so like, as night people, I never saw management for like weeks, if not months at a time. I mean, I would just show up at night, you know, watch the cameras, answer alarms all night, and then go home. I mean, there was very little like seeing my boss, I guess. And so the people I made friends with who were higher up, and they were just always annoyed with the way management ran the place. They were always just ranting to me about how much they disliked how the place was run and how they didn't like just all kinds of things. And so like three or four of them went off and just started their own security company. We'll just call that security company number 2. And so they were basically just branching off, doing the same thing that we were at security company 1. And you know, they wanted to do it their own way. So I mean, I was like, all right, cool, well maybe I'll join you guys at some point, but for now I'm still enjoying being here at number 1. So I was working here for about 5 months before I brought my cousin on, because I was like, hey, this job is pretty chill. You just get to sit around at a computer all night. I mean, if you play a lot of video games, then you're probably already pretty good at that. So I was working with him for a little while. A month after I got my cousin on board, they bring us all in for like a work meeting, which is pretty common. We'd have meetings every once in a while. And then they just like laid off like half of the team. So me and my cousin both got laid off at the same time, and they're like, yeah, sorry, we're doing pretty bad with money, so we've got to let like a lot of people go. And we're just like, oh geez. And so we were both just like, wow, okay, that sucks. I mean, I went off and I talked to my friends who were doing the security company too, and I was like, hey, can I come work for you guys? And then I eventually started working for them. I mean, it wasn't nearly that smooth of a process, but you know, that part of the story is not very important. And then my cousin ended up going back, and then he ended up getting back with security company 1 like pretty shortly after they hired him back. And so so then I was working for a different company doing the same thing, you know, just answering alarms, calling the police, using audio, yelling at people. But this time, I mean, since this was a brand new company, there wasn't nearly as much to do. So in company 1, we had about 40 projects, or 40 sites. And so, I mean, you'd have alarms popping up every couple seconds. You'd have 4 or 5 people working together, and everyone's picking up all the alarms, going through them quickly, and it's just constant busyness all night. But with this new one, we started out with only 1 site, and there were about 13 or 14 cameras on it. But I mean, it was just like, it was not a very active site, especially throughout the night. And so, I mean, I was working like 3 12s when I started, you know, just like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I mean, I was fine with it. You get 4-day weekends every week, and you still get just about full-time hours. And so let's see. But at this new one, I was working by myself for the most part. So I would just show up. At 7. You know, the building would already be empty. Sometimes I would have my boss like over in another room or something, and I would just go into my station, just sit there all night. And like I said, we only had 1 site for a while, And so it was really slow. Sometimes you'd go 3 or 4 hours without even getting a single alarm. So I mean, I would just spend all night watching movies, even just like playing games, just doing whatever to kill the time. I mean, it was one of the most laid back jobs I've ever had. Yeah, here's a picture of me working. You can see it was pretty lazy. I'm just sitting there in my pajamas with a pizza on one side and a cheesecake, and just lazing away. And I mean, I liked it and disliked it because of working by myself. Because like on one hand, like I was saying, sometimes you can get annoyed just being stuck in a room with the same people so much, and it makes you go crazy. But being alone, it's like I could watch whatever movie or listen to whatever music I wanted to, crank up the volume, just do whatever I want, and I wouldn't be bothering anybody. So that was a big plus. But after doing this for like 6 to 12 months, I mean, I was starting to go a little crazy because, I would just go like days at a time without ever even talking to anyone face to face, because I'd work by myself. I would just show up, do the job, and then go home and hardly even see any other people, like maybe pass by my roommate at one point, and then I would sleep all day. But so yeah, I just want to say what it's like working graveyards. So most of my shifts were 10 to 12 hours for a long time. And I mean, you would be driving against rush hour traffic in the evening to go to work. So everyone else is going home and like going to have dinner and that kind of thing, and you're showing up to the office while the sun is setting, and then all night you are you're sitting at a computer while everyone else is sleeping. And then in the morning, as the sun is coming up, you're going home while everyone else is going to work. So, I mean, sometimes you can just kind of laugh and be like, have a nice day at work. I'm going to bed. And so then I would usually sleep from like, I don't know, 7 or 8 in the morning till 3 or 4 in the evening. And so you really only have like a few hour period to do anything. It really sucks when you're like trying to like get your car serviced or go to some party or go shopping, basically anything you have to do during the day, because you're not awake for most of the day. And so trying to catch things when they're open can be really obnoxious. And then you have your days off where, I mean, you can't just go back to going to sleep at night and waking up during the day, because that'll throw off your entire rhythm. So you just continue staying up all night and sleeping all day. But on my days off, it was just so horrible for some periods of time, because like, think about it, it's like 2 a.m. Everyone is asleep except maybe some coworkers, but they're at work. You're just kind of sitting at home. I mean, you could play video games, but I mean, I can't really do that forever. If it's summertime, I'll say summertime is a lot better to work nights than wintertime, because summertime I'd love just like going for bike rides or walks at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I mean, I just found that so much fun because there's nobody else out there. But during the winter, I mean, you can't even go outside. It's just freezing cold. Nothing's open. There's very few 24-hour places, and even then it's pretty limited what you can do. So I mean, I would say if I had like a big group of friends who were also graveyard shift, night people, it wouldn't be so bad. But it's really hard to make friends. It's really hard to like meet anybody. You spend a lot of time alone. Being at work all night never really bothered me. It was my days off that I like just didn't know what to do with while staying up all night. But there was but back to being at Security Company 2. So I mean, time goes on, we're starting to expand, we pull in more clients, we're starting to watch more than one site. I mean, still working by ourselves. We get up to, I don't know, 10 to 15 sites, somewhere around there. And the job, the more busy it gets, I would say the less I enjoy it in a lot of cases, but some people like it busier. So the sites that we mainly watched were, we're going to be watching places when there's nobody else there. So like businesses that are closed at night, or just places that, you know, they don't want trespassers. So here's a picture of so we watched this like abandoned Kmart somewhere, like it was out of state. I mean, this place is normally abandoned, but then we would get just swarms of cars just all showing up at once. I mean, I would imagine it was some kind of car meet or something, but it just seems so strange at the time because, you know, it's just dead quiet, and then suddenly like 10 or 11 p.m. rolls around, and then all of a sudden you have 100 cars, like literally at least 100 cars swarming in. And so, you know, I pull up the microphone and I yell at them. I'm like, "Hey, this is security. You're trespassing," and all that stuff. And I mean, they don't leave. So then I call the police. And as you can see, like right here in the middle of the picture, there's these two guys getting out of that car. Those were police. And so then they start shining their flashlights around, and then all of a sudden all these cars disperse like at the same time. You just have 100 cars leaving a parking lot all at once. And so it got pretty chaotic sometimes. I mean, I wouldn't really say I've seen a lot of crazy stuff on cameras. I mean, we also would watch like car dealerships a lot, and there were a few times where this one car dealership in particular, they just had people that would just wander onto their property like in the middle of the night. It was in kind of a bad area, and yeah, it got pretty obnoxious because people would just wander in. They would try door handles, and like they would find a car door that was unlocked, and so they would just hop in or like try and take stuff out of there. So I mean, I'm like immediately calling the police at this point. And so you know, the cops show up and you get to watch on the cameras. It was pretty fun to watch sometimes because you would have like a full view on the camera and you would see where the guys were, and then you would just watch police swarm in from all sides and close in on them. And then you get to watch them get cuffed and walk away. So I mean, those times were always pretty satisfying, honestly, when you actually got arrests. I mean, there was no like award for getting arrests, but I mean, generally everyone was pretty happy with you when you caught people like that. So after about a little over a year, I mean, at Security Company 2, I was just reaching a breaking point because, you know, I'd been working nights for so long, for about a year and a half. Well, that's probably not very long for some people, but you know, you're just going crazy every single night. I mean, I wasn't really talking to hardly anybody. I mean, just kind of losing my mind. And then like my schedule kept getting messed up more and more. Like instead of working 3 or 4 12s a week, they were starting to make me work like 6-hour shifts. So I mean, I was working like 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. a lot of nights, and I was just like, man, this schedule is so stupid. Yeah, my hours were getting worse. The work was getting a lot more heavy. I mean, I was getting a lot busier, so I couldn't really entertain myself much at the job. And you know, rules start getting more strict. So it was kind of turning into more like Security Company 1, apart from I was just working alone. And so I was just becoming like miserable working there, but I was just too lazy to look for other jobs. I mean, that's always a pain. And then one day, after working about a year and a half, I just, you know, going into work like usual, and then my boss walks in, and he's just like, "Hey, we've got to let you go." And I'm like, "What? Where is this coming from?" And he's like, "So about 2 weeks ago, there was an incident where there was some people on a property, and you used audio on them, but you didn't call the police, and then they vandalized the place, and so, yeah, the client's pretty mad, so yeah, we got to let you go." And I'm just like, okay, so I guess work a year and a half at one place, and you mess up once, and you're just gone like that. So, I mean, I was pretty disappointed, but at the same time, just kind of happy to be away from it. And then, you know, I went off and found something else. So overall, I worked at both of these. Between Company 1 and Company 2, I worked about 2 years total, which, like I said, is the longest I've ever done one thing. I mean, I'm about to turn 24, so yeah, I haven't had that many years of work experience. But yeah, I would say as far as graveyard security jobs, it's like I liked it in the summer. I didn't like it in the winter. You know, if you can have something to do at nights on your days off, then it's not so bad. But going back to a day shift was a pretty big relief when you could actually just sleep at night again. But yeah, the reason I'm just telling the story is I reached out to both of these companies and neither of them were okay with me going in and filming there. So company one felt betrayed that I had like moved on to another one, which was like, well, you laid me off. So then company two, after they fired me, they were just like, oh, we don't trust you anymore. And so yeah, so it was a little difficult to be able to go and visit either one of them. But yeah, hope anyone that's looking into working graveyard shifts or security job, I hope you learned something from this. And yeah, but that's all for this video, so thanks for watching.